So my name is Dennis. I'm the CEO and founder of Forecast. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is very important. There's quite a difference between B2B outbound and B2B inbound. So what I'm going to be talking about is an inbound model, meaning that customers come to you and then you close them, right? So it's very different from trying to engage people that don't know you exist and then try to sell to them, right? So it's kind of two different approaches. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. My contact details are here, so you can always get a hold of me if you want to. So just a little bit, I'm not going to talk about what we do in that much detail, but just so you get like a context of what we do and where we are, right? So very much to the exploded car that Nicolaj just showed, I just kind of quickly drew this. So basically what we are selling a product that fits like a piece of the puzzle of running any type of company that is trying to sell some sort of hours to their clients, right? So that can be a consulting company, it could be an advertising agency, it could be a department in a large enterprise, right? And it's actually quite important that the product you're building fits into that puzzle when you're talking B2B, right? Because you will have some stakeholders in the decision process of buying things, right? So you might have some guys in sales that have, like, oh, I don't like Forecast, I like some other product, or, there can be all kinds of opinions that can be more or less fact-based, and some of them are very, very based on emotions, and some of them are more logical, right? So just to give you an understanding that, like, we basically build a product that plugs right into this gap here, that basically joins all of these things together that are typically like disparate systems that are not really very, very well connected. So we are a data science company, that's very important. So we're coming from a background as computer scientists and building a data science company and building the product as a data science engine, which means that we have basically built a project and resource management system from a very different mindset from what is already in the market, right? So we're coming from a data perspective, so we really want to use all this data that's already in these different sectors, right? Or not sectors, departments, right? And basically take that data and learn from that data, right? So that's basically what our product does. It takes all the data that is in a business and then it automatically learns from the data that comes in. All right. So this, again, back to Nicolaj. I don't know where you went. Yeah. Oh, you're right there. Okay, cool. So back to the three people he showed before, right? Strategic visionary, very, very experienced tech guy. So Danny is with a background from Netcompany as a senior architect. And then Kasper, a very, very experienced sales guy, so selling business intelligence solutions for SaaS Institute, where every sale is like $30 to $100 million, right? So like very, very big solutions. On top of that, we have a team right now of 28 people. So we are 31 people from very, very diverse backgrounds. So again, coming back to the comment you had on the team, I probably spend 70–80% of my time on hiring and finding the right people. That's basically more or less what I do all day when I don't do other stuff like carrying out the trash and all this other stuff that I still do. So just to kind of give you an understanding for, as Nicolaj said, it's very, you shouldn't join a startup for the financial motivation, right? I just thought of it today, and I used to come from a job where I earned 4 times as much as I'm doing now, right? But it's not why I'm here, right? I'm here because it's exciting, and there's hopefully an upside on the other end, right? That's very, very exciting. So why we are all here is because now this is a little bit small. Anybody that starts a business, right? We want to get to doing 100 million annual recurring revenue per year, right? That's the ideal, right? Once we get there, then we're golden, and then nobody can stop us, right? So if you look at this, so I can highly recommend this blog post, or not this post particularly, but the blog in general. So this guy is called Christoph Jans. He's an investor in Point 9 Capital who invested in Zendesk and other companies. So he's based in Berlin and has some really, really excellent material on just business and starting up a business and all kinds of venture stuff as well. So he made this model that basically says, okay, depending on what market you're in, right? So what type of customer are you selling to, right? Are you selling to flies, right? Then you need quite a lot of them to get to 100 million, right? Are you selling to elephants? You need less of them, right? To get to a lot of money, right? So it's actually quite important to define what is your ideal customer, right? And who are you trying to sell to, right? Because you can most likely, I yet haven't seen it, you cannot build a product that this guy would like, that this guy would also like, right? Because they typically have two very, very different needs. So this guy, he will expect a lot of service, he will expect a lot of features if we're talking software, right? And all kinds of other stuff, right? This guy is a little bit more focused on the price, and it shouldn't be so complex because then he doesn't know how to work it and this type of stuff, right? So where we are basically here. So we are, as we say on a daily basis, we are either hunting rabbits or we're hunting deers. So in all of our sales material, we always refer to deers and rabbits. And those are basically those two types of customers, meaning that a rabbit is anyone who brings in less than $300 per month in recurring revenue to our business. A deer is any company, excluding these guys, right, that bring in somewhere above $300, right? So the upper limit is typically somewhere around $2,000–3,000 per month in revenue per account, right? So if we're doing something that provides us with $10,000 in revenue per month, then I would consider that an elephant, and then I would actually not be interested in getting that customer, right? And that's also part of it that gets a little frustrating, is once you start out and you kind of have selected your market, and IBM comes and says, hey, this is awesome, I want to buy it, can you sell it to me? Then it's very, very difficult to say no, right? But in most cases, if you have chosen to not sell to IBMs, there are only that many IBMs in the world, right? Then you should actually be better off saying no, right? Because otherwise you get dragged down in all kinds of customization and all kinds of stuff, right? So another thing about the segmentation piece is that it's actually very important to kind of then look at all kinds of different types of traits about these different types of companies, right? So these different types of customers we're focusing on, right? So what we've done is we've kind of blocked this into small business, right? Mid-range and then enterprise, right? So these are the elephants up here, right? These are, the rabbits, right? And then in the middle, these are the deers. So basically what we do in the segmentation is that we say, okay, we're really focused on getting deers, especially, right? So we're focusing not on these guys at all, right? I don't care about these guys, right? So whenever a company comes in and looks something like this, we're just going to say no. If someone comes in like this, then it can be okay, but basically they have to run in a self-service model, right? Because if you're making less than $300 per customer a month, then you cannot really afford to spend any human interaction on them, right? Because that will be almost guaranteed a negative return on investment. So very much focused on these guys, right? So whenever people come to us and say we want to buy a product and they fit these criteria, then we're like, great, you are a perfect fit, we want to talk to you, right? So again, that can be very difficult, right? So what we've done then is taken this segment, right, and then exploding that once more, right? So we get into a smaller piece, right? Because what you could also have is you could have a customer that comes in and they are, in our sweet spot of 25 to 500 people in the company size. That could be one criteria, right? And then we say, okay, there's a department lead, right? He's looking at these products because he wants to buy it, right? If he's only gonna use this for his team, right? Then we're actually now very much emulating a customer like this, right? Because he will provide me the same amount of revenue as these small guys, right? So even though he comes from an ideal customer, he's still only gonna provide me with this type of revenue, right? Which means, again, I'm not interested in this guy, right? Unless I can self-serve him and he can kind of do it himself and I never have to talk to him, right? He just pays me some money for using the service and then he goes away at some point, right? And then again, this company could also be close to 500, right? Then they could actually be quite big, right? So again, just going from this segment to this segment can actually be quite difficult in terms of the features they're expecting, the type of product they're expecting, the type of service they're expecting, all kinds of things like that, right? So, but we've chosen to say, okay, we're going for these two at the same time, right? Because we still see that they're kind of similar, right? And they kind of have somewhat the same needs, right? You can see that their needs here are a little bit different, right? But not that much, right? So the only difference between these two guys is actually that they need more customer service, right? So if these guys buy something from us, then they actually are expecting that they have a named person they can call, right? Or chat with, right? So that could be, okay, Astrid, you have this customer, so whenever they get in touch with us, you have to talk to them, right? That could be one way of doing it, right? Where these guys don't care, right? They just talk to support, and then whoever answers the phone is just the one that they talk to, right? So that's kind of the main difference between these two types, right? But once we get into the big elephant types of guys, then it gets even more difficult, right? They will require all kinds of uptime limits and all kinds of crap, right? So how are we selling this? So basically we have built some personas. As you can see now, I've kind of, because you're going to get all these slides afterwards, I've mumble some of the stuff here, right? So you can't see some of the secret stuff we're writing on this. We have built a set of 8 personas because we're building a product that goes right in the middle of all this stuff, right? This means that whenever somebody buys our product, there will be a guy here that has an opinion on it. There will be a guy here that has an opinion on it. There will be a guy here that has an opinion on it. And there will be all kinds of other people that have an opinion on it, right? So that means that we need to persuade a team of people. It's not just one guy, right? Because the product we are selling, it typically involves, when you buy our product, it typically becomes kind of the heart of the company, right? Because we're connecting all your data, right? So as soon as you make the decision that you want to buy our product, then you're kind of committing to it, right? So that also means that you really need to talk to a lot of people, and you need to make sure that you're making the right decision when you're buying it. And that can be fine, right? But that just poses a challenge on the sales process, because that typically makes the sales process longer, right? Because you have to have maybe, let's say you have to have 5 people agree. That will be a much longer process than just having one person saying, all right, I can buy this as $100 with my credit card, right? There you go, boom. So we're using these personas very much. So we're using these personas both in terms of how we're building the product. So whenever we build a new feature, a new piece of functionality in our software, we make sure that one of these people, now there are 6 more, right? They actually have a need for the stuff we're building, right? So it actually solves a business case for them, right? And we're using 2 frameworks I can recommend. We're using Jobs to be Done, which is a very good framework on kind of figuring out what type of functionality you're building, right? Because you're not building functionality just to satisfy a developer, right? They would love that was the case, right? Because developers love building stuff, but it actually has to solve a business need. Otherwise, it's not that useful, right? So Jobs to be Done, and then basically using these personas on the Jobs to be Done. So I definitely recommend doing both those. So what we've done for all of these personas then is, on top of this, right, simulating all these personas, right, one thing how we got into these personas is obviously talking to a lot of customers, right? That's the way to do it, right? You can obviously you can sit at your desk, right, and you can do some research, and you can figure out some stuff, but ultimately you have to go and talk to people, right? That's pretty core to making this work. Otherwise, you're just making assumptions, and most of the time those assumptions will be wrong, and then you have to rebuild, and it's a long and annoying process, right? So what we've done for all these personas, right, is we figured out, okay, let's say we have a managing director, right? What does he really like in his daily work? This has nothing to do with the product, right? This is just him as a person, right? What does he like in his daily work? What enjoys him, or does he enjoy, sorry? And then what does he hate, right? So this could also be personal stuff, depending on what type of product you're building, right? But in this case, right, so he's, missing some real-time insights, right? He's missing the opportunity to kind of share some insights from his business, right? He hates losing quotes to other competitors, right? He hates when his projects are failing, and stuff like this, right? You can make like a long list of all these pros and cons for each, and the same for project manager, and we have one for all of the personas, right? And we're continuously updating these, right? So we update these at least every quarter or every 6 months, right? We update these and kind of refine them. So this is iteration, I don't even know, but quite a few iterations that we've done on this, right? Because you're constantly learning something new, right? And especially when you're engaging with customers and you're talking to them about their problems, right? You will, if you're a little bit structured about it, right? You will realize some patterns that are kind of common denominators for these people, right? Because not all managing directors will have, will be liking to share insights, right? Not all people want to do that, right? In that position, but the majority want to do it, right? Maybe. So that could be one case, right? So then we're coming into the sales process, and as I said in the beginning, it's very different doing an inbound sales process. So just to explain that a little bit, we have a website. We try to get people to come to our website, and then we try to make them interested. And once they're interested, hopefully they sign up to a trial. Once they sign up to a trial, then they get into some sort of demo mode or some evaluation mode where they're kind of evaluating, is this product useful for them? And then as soon as they get into that stage, right, that's where salespeople start engaging them, right? And that's where we kind of start talking to them, right? So we don't have people that are sitting and calling, just opening the phone book like you have in some other companies, right? You would open the phone book and you just start calling from A to B, right? So it's quite 2 different types of people you need, and it's quite 2 different types of way to run your sales process, right? So I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's basically just a matter of kind of what type of product do you have and how do you intend to sell it, basically, right? So this is a little bit detailed, right? So just to kind of explain it, right? We have some channels, right? So people are coming in, they're finding us somewhere, right? They go to the website, right? And then at some point, inflection point here, right? They sign up, right? So marketing is responsible for all this stuff, right? So they're responsible for generating leads that will then go to a trial process, right? And as soon as the trial process starts, then the sales team basically takes over, right? Our process is actually not quite like this because we actually have customer success starting all the way here. So that means that whenever you sign up to try our product, you will get acquainted with the sales guy, and that sales guy will, at the first meeting that you have with him, introduce the customer success person. And that has two advantages. One advantage is that then it's very clear for the customer that the sales guy is the sales guy, right? So the sales guy's responsibility is to get some money from you, right? That's what he's going to do. But the customer success person has a very different mission, right? So the customer success person has the mission that they want to make you successful in using the product. So that means that if you have just a sales guy here, right, you will sometimes have customers that are reluctant to ask questions because they're afraid that he's going to hit them with some sort of stuff that costs money, right? So, I'm not saying again that this is better than the other one, right? But we've just found that that works better for us, right? And then obviously the product team supports all the way through, right? Because also from this, you get a lot of feedback, right? So all this feedback obviously goes back into the product, right? Because you will never build it wrong or right the first time, right? So that it could take anywhere from a few weeks to many years to kind of get to optimal product market fit, right? And we've been working on this for now 2 years, right? And I would still say there's still some ways to go for us, right? And also you'll get into this process where, once you have loyal customers and you start changing stuff in the product, they get annoyed, right? Because they actually bought this feature that you sold them 6 months ago. And now you're changing the feature, you're making it better, but in their opinion, you might not necessarily make it better, right? Because now they kind of learned it and it's kind of working for their process. And now you're changing it, so they actually end up getting annoyed, right? So it actually gets quite a balancing act between kind of new customers and loyal customers and what their needs are, right? Also because the ones that are coming in here, right, they come in with zero knowledge, right? So as soon as they start learning the product, I mean, if you guys just imagine having to switch your email client, right? That'd be a little bit annoying, right? So, the barrier for doing that is, you really have to have an incentive to change your behavior in doing that, right? So if you're used to Outlook, no matter how crappy Outlook is, right, you will, keep using it, right? Because, it does the job and, you don't really have an incentive to change it, right? So this guy won't know nothing, right, but learn more and more. And then, hopefully at some point, if they don't leave before, right, they will become a loyal customer, right? So that's, again, two very different mindsets. So sales strategy-wise, again, we've kind of defined, so very much working on the, what type of company are we getting at, the personas, right? And then how we're pitching this to the customers, right? So what makes them interested in buying it, right? What makes them interested in getting to the next step? That's kind of the whole funnel process, right? Is getting them interested to go to the next step and then getting them interested to get to the next step. And then at some point, they will hopefully give you some money, right? So that's a combination of marketing to drive engagement and interest and understanding who you are and where you can be found. So that could be all kinds of stuff. It could be placed content. It could be, building up your own content in a blog, becoming an expert, and then people come to you and they're like, oh, these guys just know everything about this industry or segment or whatever it could be. That will drive traffic, right? And then if you're thinking in kind of network effects, then, hooking on to other ecosystems that are already working, right? So if you have a software like a piece of software like ours, then it's super important for us to be in the Slack app directory, right? Because then people will find us, right? It could be all kinds of other, places where kind of the ecosystem is there to kind of help you spread the word, right? So again, this is a very cheap way of doing it. This is a little bit more expensive. This is a little bit more expensive. This is very expensive, and this is like super expensive, right? So obviously you can do campaigning and stuff, and that really requires like continuous optimization and figuring out how much am I paying for the leads, how, at what rate are they closing? Am I even making the money back that I paid Google to advertise my advertisements? And then we have the sales part, right? So the sales part can also drive interest at almost an early stage like this, right? So you could use social selling, right? So that means that you can go on LinkedIn and you can, read some guy's blog post that might be your target customer, right? So you can read the guy posts some stuff, right? And then you read it and you're like, okay, this is great. And then you comment on it and be like, hey, I read your post. It's awesome. I've experienced something similar. I don't know. This could be an example, right? And then if you keep doing that, then at some point that guy will go on LinkedIn as well, right? And he will look at you and he'll say, okay, this guy is always commenting on my stuff, right? Who is this guy, right? And then he will realize, okay, it could be Dennis. All right, he has this company Forecast. What the hell is that? I'll go to Forecast website and I see it, and then he might be interested, right? So that could be one way of kind of driving also interest from a sales perspective, right? It could also be on Quora. I don't know if you know that platform, but it's like a Q&A platform where people can ask all kinds of questions on all kinds of stuff like why is Trump president, right? And then you could go and post your answer to that, right? So that could be also a way of driving traffic, right? Then you can do direct sales, and direct sales can be outbound, but it can also be inbound, right? But I think in this context, it's more thought of as a somewhat outbound model, right? Where you find ideal customers, you make like a list of ideal customers, right? You put them on a list. There's GDPR and stuff, right? So make sure that you follow that process. But you could actually start sending them emails, and then they might pick up some interest from you, right? Then there's kind of the customers you already have. Definitely potential to maybe upsell to them, right? So it might have been a marketing department that bought your product, and now you're trying to sell it to the IT department, right? That would be an easier sale than trying to sell to a completely new customer. And then you can try to kind of incentivize people to refer their friends, right? So that's also a very classical strategy, saying, okay, you will get a $50 discount for the next 2 months if you refer 2 of your friends. That's a classical approach, right? Especially for social networks, where you kind of have 2 sides that you need to make work to kind of get it going, right? So again, we are thinking about these axes, right? So we have little money, tons of money, small fish, right? Big whales, right? Then so this is just an example of some. So a lot of these slides will actually be examples of real life stuff that we've done, right? So what we've done is we've kind of looked at, okay, all the ideas we had for selling, and then we kind of plotted them on this diagram, right? So what could we sell, right? So we have some ideal clients. We could pitch them something about co-creation, where we kind of say, hey, we have this new product. We'd really love your feedback. Could you provide us feedback, and we'll give you a discount for 6 months. That could be one way of trying to engage a customer, right? It could also be, if you're going for enterprise, then often it's like a cost takeout where they can save some money, right? So buy our product, we'll save you 1% on your bottom line, right? Then, you'll probably get a meeting at some point if the company is big enough. You can also piggyback on the other ecosystems as I talked about, right? So in this case, Jira, right? So the way we are pitching it is we're pitching this as AI-driven resource management for Jira. So basically, we are in the Jira App Store, in Atlassian's App Store. And if people go in that App Store and they search for resource management, we will pop up on the first page, right? So that's one way of also trying to sell on the back of other types of ecosystems. So these are just kind of some examples, right? And then we've kind of plotted them on this little to a lot money axis, right? Which actually then enables us to figure out, okay, where can we make the largest amount of money for the least effort, right? So this one is a problem, right? Because it's difficult and takes a long time, but also if we make it work, we can make a lot of money, right? But this might not be ideal, right? So you can see we picked these 3 as the ones we're going for, right? So those are the ones we're working on at the moment. And then you have a funnel, right? So you'll always have some sort of sales funnel. This is our own funnel. It's a very standard funnel. I think our naming is a little bit different, but it's a very standard type of funnel, right? You have people that are coming in from some sources. They become leads at some point, right? So they sign up for a trial, right? Then they look at the product for the trial period and they start evaluating, okay, is this for me? Can it solve my problem? You'll probably have some meetings with them. You will have some emails, and you might call them, right? To just kind of drive some engagement, right? Then once they are kind of, then you will have some steps on kind of defining when they go to the next step, right? But I'll get into that in 2 seconds. Then basically figuring out, okay, these are interested in buying, right? Good step, right? Then we need to figure out, okay, what is their budget? Have they figured out how to use the product, right? Are they still completely lost? I mean, that could be the case, right? They're coming in with 0 knowledge of anything, right? And they might not understand the terminology you're using in the product or whatnot. So you need to kind of educate them, right? Then once you kind of educated them and you might have shown them some ROI, right? In our case, right? Because ROI is quite important, right? So we're saying to them, okay, if you use our product, we promise you that within 90 days, we will increase the amount of money you earn per hour with X%, right? That's the typical approach that we use to sell. So that's interesting for a company like Niels', right? Where you're selling hours, or your old company where you're selling hours, right? You like to make some more money per hour, right? So that's the business case approach, right? Then basically comes the proposal, and the proposal sounds very formal. It doesn't have to be that formal. It could also just be like a commitment from the customer saying, okay, this is great. I want to buy it. Here's my credit card, and then you're happy, right? Then you get to the part where you've kind of made the sale, right? Then the important part is to, then once you've kind of convinced them to pay you some money, that you make them stay. Because if you don't make them stay, then the effort here is useless, right? So it's much cheaper to make paying customers stay than it is to get new customers, right? So once they get to this point, you really have to do any and everything you can to make them stay, right? If they are the right type of customer, obviously, right? So if they're the wrong type of customer and they started paying, it's fine that they leave, right? Because you will probably be better off. So what we are doing is we're saying, okay, if you have our product and you have used it for 90 days, then typically we know that you will be a staying customer, right? And you will become a loyal customer at some point, and then we're kind of hands off on that, right? But in this period, it's very important that we are like online on the support, and we're really eager to answer questions and help them set up a web session and help them understand some questions and things like that, right? And then once they're happy, right, then hopefully you will make a case story, right? And then that will make your next sale easier, right? Because now you have a case story saying, okay, we sold this to a consulting company. There were 25 people, and they now are making X amount more money per month or per year using our product, right? Then the sale becomes much easier, right? And obviously it's about building up a library of these, right? Because if you come to let's say you have a case with a 25 people consulting company, and you then come to a construction company that are, let's say, 500 people, right? And you say, I have this great case from a consulting company that are 25 people. Then the construction company will say, but that, has nothing to do with my business, right? So you can, that's totally unrelatable, right? So it's a matter of kind of building up a library of customers with customer case stories that fit the different types of companies that come in, right? So even though they're ideal customers, they might be in different segments, for instance, right? How am I doing on time? Does anybody have any?
15 minutes left.
All right, cool.
17 minutes left.
Yeah, cool. So then what are we doing here, right? Then this is the same funnel, right? As we saw before. We have some drivers, right? We have some metrics. So again, coming back to your thing on metrics, right? So I read some post the other day that somebody here wrote that we're professional nerds. I think someone wrote, which I think is a very fitting description. So we try to kind of make systems for everything. So what we do is we try to make a process that works, and then once that process works, we try to kind of automate it, right? Because the more we automate, the less time we have to spend. We can spend that on something that's more important, right? So a lot of metrics, super important, right? Then we kind of figure out, okay, what's the sales cycle, right? So that could be, 1 day, people buy right away, that's great. It could be 500 days. Oh my God, you really need a lot of cash to make this work, right? And then figuring out kind of, okay, so you'll have a lot of people that come in. And if you're in an inbound model like we are, you will probably have about 60 to 70% of the ones that come in that are not even interested in the product, right? They might have signed up by accident. They are, just looking, all kinds of stuff, right? So actually, already at that point, your amount of leads that are coming in is actually quite strong. So it's actually important to differentiate all the inbound stuff, right? And then how many of those actually get to become paying customers, right? And then obviously you'll have some growth numbers, right? So what we've done is we have this thing that we call sales plays. So sales plays are different types of topics or kind of packages of information or kind of problem-solving stuff that we can pitch to a customer, and they might relate to it or not. So this is just an example, right? So we have a content arsenal, right? We have a demand generation here, we have lead generation, and we have conversion support. And these are just some examples, right? There could be many more, there can be less, right? And then by the color coding, you can see, okay, this is actually performance marketing, but content marketing is providing content for this, right? So you'll actually have two departments, if you want to call it that. That's often either the same person or maybe at max 2 different people. But they will be pitching in both of them in this case, right? This is mainly driven by content marketing, right? And you'll see that we have these types of definitions, right? We have fast lane content, we have sidewalk, and then we have mid lane, right? And the definition of that is that fast lane content is people that are coming in and they are like, they know they have a problem, they want to buy it right now, right? So they're like eager to buy. Let's buy. Okay, we have to select a solution. We'll select it within 1 week, and then we'll buy it, right? So these guys, you have to treat them differently from the sidewalk and the mid-lane guys, right? So the mid-lane guys, they know they want to buy something, but they're not quite sure, right? So they might be evaluating, 10 products. They might be evaluating 200 products. You don't really know, right? So that could take anywhere from a short time to a long time. And then you have sidewalk people, and sidewalk people are people that are, peripherally interested in the topic. They know they need something next year, or what do I know, right? At some point. So why we're treating them differently is because they have different behaviors, and that means that we have to treat them differently in the sales process. So that means that a sidewalk person could come in. Oh, I've been following your blog for a year. It's great. Now I'm ready to buy the product. That could be a completely valid case, right? It could also be a customer that comes in and said, oh, I had a trial 8 months ago. We couldn't really make a decision at that point, but now we're ready, right? And then it becomes from sidewalk to mid lane to fast lane, right? So there are quite some different, what do we call this? Competencies that you need to kind of make this work, right? Rarely you will have one person that is able to do all this stuff, right? Unless, I don't know. If you know that person, then get in touch with me. He has a job, or he or her has a job, right? So what we're doing with these sales places, then because we cannot do everything at once, right? We're putting them on a calendar. This seems very basic, but it's actually quite important. Saying, okay, we have this is again a sales play where we're saying, okay, if you bundle forecast with Xero, and Xero is an accounting system, this means we can tie these two together. That will target typically a Xero customer that has the same problem that we're solving, right? Then we can basically go find all the Xero customers, and then we can reach out to them, or we can try to make an advertisement for them, and then they will come in and they will say, okay, this is great, this is what I've been looking for some time, right? So these are ones that are kind of running in shorter bursts. Then we have stuff that's always running. So that would be just general branding, trying to just get the word out there to make people understand who we are. It could be a referral program. This is just basically when we're starting it then, right? Because now this is started and then it just runs. Retargeting. So retargeting is also something we're using quite a lot. So that means that if you go and sign up to a trial using our product, then we're putting a pixel on your machine, right? And then we know who you are, right? So that means that what we're doing is once you get into your Facebook account, then we know you've been trialing our product, and then we basically put ads all the way through the trial period, right? So we have ads running for those 14 days that the trial runs, and then we stop, right? And I haven't really seen anybody else do that. It's a very effective process because typically you will start retargeting and you'll keep doing it, but that becomes quite expensive, right? So we're trying to kind of limit our cost on this, right? So we know that this runs for 14 days, right? And we have the starting date in our database. It's fairly simple, right? And then we basically know how to programmatically turn on and off the advertising campaign in Facebook, right? This is complex. This is like you can read this at home, right? But again, it's very important to so these are people, right? These are just short names for people, right? So this is Slatomir, this is Kasper, this is Jacek, whatever, right? So this is just to define owners of different types of stuff, right? So that means that you sign up for a trial, and then we define, are you a good fit customer or not, right? So are you a no-fit customer? Okay, then we don't really do much about you, right? We don't really care, right? Are you a customer that is our ideal, and we believe that you want to buy something, right? Then you become a marketing qualified lead, MQL. So all of these terms that I'm using can all be looked up, right? So if you're doubt about that, you can contact me, right? Then we use some LinkedIn ads, and then we have some flow automatically that runs, right, during the trial. So we basically set up an automatic flow that runs, that sends you some emails, it sends you some messages and all kinds of stuff to get you engaged during the usage of the product so we can convert you in the end, right? And then coming back to this automation part, so making stuff, this was not automated in the beginning, obviously, right? It would be a person that would just do this, right? And we'd figured out if the process was correct. And then once we figured out kind of, okay, this process somewhat works, then we try to automate it. So now this is not in sequential order, I think, right? But this will happen first once you sign up, right? Then this will happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. And one thing that's important in an inbound model, if you're making a product that's just not even that complex, right, is that you need to have people hired that are not afraid of calling, right? So back to Nicolaj's, if you don't want to call and talk to people, then it's a little difficult. Let's put it that way, right? So how could that work, right? That could work by saying, okay, we'll have a let's meet. So you sign up, right? And then we say, hey, let's meet and show you the ropes of the system. It's very easy. It will take you 15 minutes, right? Or 5 minutes, right? In this case, for the discovery call, right? This will take 15 minutes. This will take 5 minutes. And then basically, this is just kind of the recipe for running a let's meet call, right? So typically less than 5 minutes. The purpose of this call is to get to the next stage in the funnel. The purpose of this call is to get to the next stage in the funnel, and so on, right? So this could be a call, it could be a meeting, it could be whatever, right? We're running out of battery here. And then kind of trying to frame the problem, right? So we're trying to kind of see, okay, this is very generic, right? So we kind of try to solve their problems, right? That's the kind of the most important part from this, right? And then a part of this is that you will have a process where some customers will stop replying to you, or they will, kind of just go incognito, right? And then the sales guy's job is then to reactivate them and kind of try to re-engage them, right? And in that process, you can have different types of packages of content you can kind of engage them with, right? So you could, for instance, you could call and ask them what integrations they would like to prioritize to make this puzzle work, right? That would be one way of asking the customer, right? You'd be like, oh, hey, great, you called me because, I've been looking to connect to this, whatever, right? That could be one way, right? So these are all kinds of examples for what you could do in terms of engagement, right? And then I've printed this, so again, being very process-oriented, I printed this seller's DNA. I think we printed them all for everyone. It's kind of like a little take-home thing. Again, a recipe for when you're trying to sell to somebody. Actually, the most important part is consistency, and again, following a process, right? Because if you can kind of build a sales machine and follow a process, then you will at some point be successful. No matter how incompetent you are at selling, you will at some point manage to sell something. I will guarantee you. So this is basically just kind of again a recipe for how you could structure a way of selling to a customer, and how you would pre-frame it, and how you would engage them with different types of ideas, right? And then these 3 books are great. There are also a few other books. So Jason Lemkin just wrote a book. I just bought it. I haven't read it yet. So Jason Lemkin is a very famous guy who has built quite a lot of companies. And then there's Aaron Ross, who's also written a very good book called Predictable Revenue, which is also a very interesting way of kind of structuring your process. I think I'm done, right? Try to go to the next one. All right, yay! Cool.
A few questions. If anyone have questions for Dennis?
I was just curious as to I understand you're trying to sell to consulting companies, and, mostly selling hours, but is there any industry vertical segmentation that your customers come from?
Sorry, what?
Any particular industry segment,
Yes,
the channels that you
so that depends on what type, how you're segmenting that, right? But I would say, consulting would be a segment for me, right?
Yeah.
It could also be advertising agency. That would be a different segment, but very similar, but not quite the same, right? Because they have a little bit different ideas of what they want, right? So if you're selling to an advertising agency, which is actually a very, very large part of our customer base, they're very focused on it being, very nice, and it has to look good and stuff like that. If you're selling to a construction company, they don't give a shit how it looks, right? As long as it does it do the job, right? I mean, they're used to using stuff that you would not imagine, right? So, and then if it looks nice on the top, right, then okay, that's just great, right? But it's not why they're buying it, right? They're buying it to solve the problem. Yeah. That's why you will see a lot of products that are actually very successful. But we can take Atlassian and Jira for one example, right? It's actually not a very nice product, right? But it solves the job, right? And that's why people like it, right? So that could be a good example of where you kind of also have to focus your powers when you're building stuff, right? Oh yeah, okay, you're the man in charge.
The handout didn't make it all the way around. Is that coming out to you on email?
We can send it on email, yeah. With they'll get the slides as well, right?
Okay, yes, you get the slides.
So I'll just send a PDF. We'll send a PDF with it, right?
Yeah. I think maybe down there first.
Do you have any suggestion on what was your process to understand really what was your sweet spot between like the size of your customers and like the standardization versus customization? Because I guess there's a bit of optimization to do there. I don't know if
Yeah.
you can share some insight.
All of this requires content optimization, right? And it's very difficult. I'll say this, that we actually learned the hard way because, all of us come from a consulting background, right? And we actually started out by selling our product to like the elephants, right? Which was great once we closed the deal, right? Because we made like $100,000 per deal, but it took 9 months to do the deal, right? It was like, fuck, we need like a lot of cash to make this work, right? If you have the cash to make it work, that's probably a much better business, right? But we kind of had to tweak it because we just didn't have the capacity or the expertise to kind of tackle that, right? So I mean, if you're relying on one guy to kind of go and sell it, and he can sell everything, right? Then as soon as you lose that guy and you don't have a process for it, right? Then what are you going to do, right? So that doesn't really work, right? So you kind of again, that's also why we're trying to automate stuff, right? Is that if a guy leaves or a girl leaves, then it's not that big of a problem, right? We can hopefully to some extent at least try to replace them. Right?
I think maybe there was, yeah.
Very interesting what you were saying. I was wondering, why do you use Facebook now that it's business to business?
We're actually using Facebook because once you come home from work and you want to relax, right, you will go to Facebook. Some people, okay, maybe you won't, but a lot of people will do that actually, right? And then we're trying to kind of affect them while they're off work, because then they will it will lurk in the back of their mind, right? And then at some point they will wake up the next day and they'll be like, oh, I have to go check out this forecast stuff again, right? It looked pretty cool. They showed me some nice stuff, right?
So politics is there's a person behind a company.
Everything is a person, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's why I said you have a ton of ideal personas here, right? You have to convince them all, right? If just one person in our sales process doesn't like the product, it will end up being a no decision.
But I don't understand this whole.
So that's just to say different departments, right?
What is that?
That's just all kinds of other stuff, right? So we have a sales department, we have an operations, right? And we have some accounting, right? We're connecting the data from all these departments, right? So that's just what I'm saying. The sales guy will have a very different need than the accounting person, right? But we have to convince them all, otherwise they won't buy it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it actually gets a little bit complex, right? Because it's not the same as when you go and buy a watch, right? You can decide for yourself if you want the watch, right? You might ask your husband or something, right? And be like, hey, do you like it? And then, he might say no, and then you buy it anyways, right? That's not the case here, right?
Can go with that.
Yeah.
No.
My question is actually connected to Mrs. Regarding Facebook and cost per lead acquisition.
Yeah.
We are talking about B2B.
Yes.
So you need a lot of different exposure, different
Yeah.
channels, different advertising to make them buy. How do you optimize on these different channels? How do you know Facebook works or at what point you
I mean, that's very easy to track actually, right? So you just have to track it.
repeat the question?
Yeah, okay, sorry. So the question was, how do we know how to optimize campaigns that we're running on Facebook versus LinkedIn, for instance, right? No?
How do you determine exactly the cost per lead acquisition from different channels? Because your customers might not buy because they see your ad on Facebook. They might buy better from AdWords, but anything.
Yeah, but we can measure conversion rate very easy, right? So we can see, okay, these guys have seen the advertisement, right? And all of a sudden they are in the trial. Great, it worked, right? Or they came back to the trial, right? So we're connecting all that in our database, right? Basically, right? So whenever you click on an ad in Facebook, we log that in our database. So we know that you clicked on it. And then you log into the system, right? Then we're like, okay, then we have at least some sort of understanding that it works, right? And we do that for every channel, yes.
I think the question was more like if you have any cross-channel conversion tracking, probably.
Yes, we do. That requires, so there's one thing to that is that, yes, we do. But that requires that you move out of Google Analytics because it's actually not allowed in Google Analytics. So we're using a different product to track that. But yes, we are tracking it across.
And what product do you use?
Right now we're using a product called Mixpanel, which allows you to basically identify the person and see whatever they've done, more or less, right? But that's part of the consent that they accept when they go to the site, right?
So final question before we take the break. So was the one here we missed? Did we miss a question that you had before?
Yeah, I think it's starting to be covered by the others, but
Okay.
but I just wanted to say very impressive sales methodology. I hope we end up there someday. And therefore, I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about the evolution, about how you got the journey from. Did you say you started completely manually and then
Yes.
and then to the automated degree?
So what we did, I took me and Kasper. We actually what we did was we the first thing we did was, well, not the first thing, but one of the first things we did was we found a lot of ideal customers who we believed were the ideal customers, right? Then we called them and we arranged meetings with them, and then we basically drove around Denmark for 1 week and talked to every one of them for 2 hours about their problems and what they were trying to solve. So that's one way of doing it, you know. That's one way of, you know, spending a week in a car. If you like to do that, you could also, you know, arrange meetings online and stuff like that, right? But there's just something different when you're trying to learn stuff that you do it physically, right? Because you will only get so much from a webinar, right?
So let's break here to
Yep.
keep the time. First of all, thanks to Dennis.